High Court in Pretoria has ruled that 3 Karpowership electricity generation licenses issued by energy regulator NERSA are in fact invalid. Now, the organisation undoing tax abuse started challenging these deals back in 2022 on the basis of the absence of required environmental authorizations and port approvals, as well as pending criminal investigations against the Karpowership entities, among other reasons. Now, the deals were meant to be part of a 20-year plan to introduce floating power stations in the country, set to cost about 200 billion rand. Let's bring in Outer's Executive Director, Advocate Stephanie Fick. It's good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. We've obviously outlined a whole range of reasons why this deal effectively was declared invalid by the High Court. But perhaps, can we go back just a few years to when the Daily Maverick first exposed how this deal came to be, that emergency procedures were abused to sidestep all of these authorizations that were needed to cement the Karpowership deals. And of course, we know we were in the midst of COVID-19 at the time.
Yes. This all started you didn't get the feeling that all was transparent. So they got environmental authorization on an emergency basis, and that was then withdrawn. And up to today, they still don't have all the environmental authorizations they are supposed to have, And I think it began there. And if you look back, I think right from the start, you get the feeling that this was an idea, something that they wanted to do, and they wanted to push it through. Whether it's the best deal for South Africa at the time and all of that. And I think they used the whole emotional crisis that everybody was feeling with COVID-19, the fact that they said, but, we have load shedding, and this is the saving grace. If you are struggling because of load shedding, the Karpowerships is going to be, the answer. And unfortunately, it wasn't. And the reason why we took on NERSA is because it also looked like NERSA just turned a blind eye, approved the generation licenses without really applying their mind, applying rationality. Because how can you give them distribution licenses without them having environmental authorization, having them, there was no financial close yet, there were no contracts in place of, for example, Eskom that will actually buy the electricity. So to use an example, the day before yesterday when we got the order, Karpower, who in Karpower SA doesn't exist anymore, still had distribution licenses. And it's something like that is why we took this on. This deal was also extremely expensive.
Yeah.
If you look at the details.
Yeah, 200 billion rand over the course of 20 years. But it really was a situation that we were looking for a solution. We had been going through many, many years of load shedding. We were in the midst of a pandemic. It looked like there was no end in sight for load shedding. I mean, outside of and I know this is not an issue that we can sidestep, but outside of the environmental licensing issues, could this have been, if we didn't eventually get load shedding and our electricity challenges under control, could this have been an answer to South Africa's challenges with power?
No, I don't think it was the best solution for South Africa's troubles. So firstly, if you just, we didn't have a lot of information. That's why we also, when we took NERSA to court, wanted all the documents, and we also were given a run around there. And once Karpowership gave NERSA, our national regulator, the permission, then they gave us some of the information, but that's probably a story for another day. It was extremely expensive. So except for, the talk about 200 billion over 20 years, that's an estimate. No one could tell how much this is going to cost South Africa, in the 20 years. For example, the gas were bought is in dollars. So just that fluctuation is nearly impossible to say how much this will cost us over 20 years. And then load shedding. It would have assisted with maybe a stage or two of load shedding. It wasn't the saving grace for Eskom that there will be no load shedding. it was also not plug and play. Someone asked, we have the ships and immediately it can alleviate Eskom's problems. No, just think about our country. A lot of our mines and electricity comes from, the north. So it's from up there down to the coast, if I can use that example. Now, the Karpowership would have been in the harbor. So you need to look at infrastructure that runs from down there up to wherever it is needed. So it wasn't a plug and play and really not the saving grace. And if you think about it, here we are today. Our grid is not perfect and Eskom can't promise us that there will never, ever be load shedding again. But we do not have load shedding.
Yeah.
We would have sat with that contract for the next 20 years, probably costing us more than 20 billion. And all that cost would have been put on your electricity bill.
Yeah. We call it an impulse buy, don't we? When we go to the shops and we buy something we kind of like, we think we might look good in it. Except the ramifications here are much, much larger than this. The more worrying thing as well was the fact that the power generation license granted to Karpowership by NERSA, we never had the full terms of that license.
A lot of the terms and conditions were all in the air. And I think that is also why, the transparency wasn't really there. There were suggestions in the beginning, and I don't know if anybody was held accountable. When we started talking, you referred to the fact that they got environmental authorizations, and those were all withdrawn because of some of the shenanigans that happened. So I don't know if anyone was held accountable. There was a criminal case, but it is all of this that all just points to if where there's smoke, there's fire. But let's look at today. I think that there's alternative solutions to, electricity. And instead of Eskom grinding people that thought of alternatives like solar, now you need to register and jump through so many hoops, make it attractive for people to assist with electricity and the grid and make electricity available. Independent power producers. I mean, I don't want to get involved in an argument whether solar and wind is our saving grace. That is also not our saving grace. It's a combination between all the technologies.
Yeah, it's that energy mix that we were looking for. So it's been a long saga. It's been a 3-year legal battle to get to the point where we are now. We now know for sure that the Karpowership deal is dead in the water, so to speak. So the question is, did we spend as a country any money in the course of, since this license was granted up to now?
We shouldn't have,
okay.
But I think there's always money that is spent on. Just if you from a different point of view, salaries are being paid. So we always spend money, but I think the deal was stopped before an enormous amount. If we signed those contracts and they got the environmental authorizations and all the other tick boxes. We would have been in it for the long haul and not the most reasonable, I think, contract we could have thought about in order to help Eskom with electricity shortage.
Yeah, certainly. Advocate Stephanie Ficht, thank you for your time this afternoon. She's the Executive Director at the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. And the High Court, according to the Daily Maverick, driving the final nail into this Karpowership deal.